So hello and a warm welcome to you all. My name is Mark Morley and this is the IT Business Partner Playbook, a new series where I'll be joined every week by business partners and business relationship managers from around the globe. In this episode, as with every other, we'll be cutting through the noise and getting real about the day-to-day life of BRMs and IT business partners. This is where roles, relationships and results meet, unscripted, unfiltered and grounded in experience. Before we jump into today's conversation, I've got two quick asks. First, if you've got any thoughts or ideas or feedback about the podcast, I'd love to hear them. So please do share either in the comments or directly to me. Your input really helps us shape the kinds of conversations that we have. As I say, they are unscripted, but if we know kind of the things that are important to our audience, then we can make sure those things are included in the episode. And secondly, if you're finding value in these episodes, please hit the subscribe button. Give the episode a thumbs up. It helps us reach more people and therefore grow the community and offer more guidance. So on to today's episode. I'm really delighted to be joined by Scott Hudson, a business partner in the US. Scott has been in the role for around 8 years in two different organizations. But before that, he spent many years in academia. So I'm really looking forward to hearing how his current role has benefited from those prior years and any specific lessons he's learned that he's been able to apply in his more recent roles. So good morning to you, Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Can I hand over you to a quick introduction before we dive into some candid conversation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today. I am an IT business partner by title at a large healthcare organization. I'm located in a local hospital, and our team is spread across multiple hospitals within our organization. And I support leadership at all levels when it comes to IT related items. So that's what I do.
Is this and how? So the role that you're in now, I know you've been a business partner in two organizations. Does the role you're doing now differ much from where you were before, or is it you find it's quite the same?
Yeah, this is quite different role.
Okay.
Roles I've had before, relationships have always been key to those roles, and building relationships, leveraging, cultivating relationships have always been a part of that. This particular role is a little bit different. Before I was doing something for our corporate offices, and in the demand structure and project structure there is a little bit different, whereas I'm in a local hospital now and the needs are just a little bit different, and the leadership styles are a little bit different as well.
Okay. And how is BRM or business partnering viewed by management in those organizations? Do you feel it's received similar support?
Yeah, I think so. I think our role is supported, but I don't know that there's a full understanding of what business partnership is or BRM is. We've transitioned over the years from being that order taker, hey, I need a computer, get me a computer, to moving into more strategy and more, kind of long-term goals. How can we infuse technology into what you're planning for the hospital or for the organization? Yeah.
Okay.
So it has evolved. That's where it gets a little confusing, because for some people who get it, they get it, and if we have one type of relationship, but for those who, or more of the, hey, I don't know, my computer's broken, how can I get it fixed? That's a different type of relationship. So it's evolving. My role is IT business partner in my hospital, but we've also been called CRMs, customer relationship managers.
Okay.
And my leader a while ago asked us to go through the BRM program and get certified and take the tests and stuff, and that's what we've done. So we're kind of in the middle of a flow of different titles, different expectations. So yeah.
Do you think doing the training has helped kind of create a foundation so that everyone's kind of singing from the same hymn sheet?
Yeah, I believe so. I think so. For some, it was validating that we were already doing a lot of the pieces and parts of the training we received, and but then there was a lot of learning and a lot of knowledge transfer where trying to move out of that order taker role into more of that trusted partner, trusted advisor, into that strategic partner. And I think it's really helped us evolve, and also kind of evaluate the expectations that are put upon our team as well, and see if that's the best use of resources or best use of our time, and if we should engage other teams to take care of the parts and pieces that had traditionally been expected of us.
Okay. And how do you find, how is the role received by your business partners? Do you think they understand, what it is that you do and how you can help?
I don't, yeah, it's received very well, but I don't know that they really have a vision of how we can help yet. And I think that's a lot of the challenge that I'm facing is just constant communication, constant, level setting, building that close relationship, lots of check-ins, lots of, just kind of that, like I said, constant communication,
Right.
just to do that level setting. Yeah.
How long has the business partner function been in the organization? Was it there before you joined?
Yeah. So we've had I was hired in about 8 years ago as an IT business partner. And that role has been, there for many years prior to my joining the team. But it hasn't been, but for like the last 2 or 3 years where we've taken the training for BRM and things like that. So it's evolving still.
Do you have HR business partners and finance business partners in the work in the
Yeah, in our organization, we do. We have HR business partners. We don't necessarily have finance business partners. And I haven't had too much interaction with the HR business partners, to be honest with you, in the current role that I am. When I was supporting the corporate office, I supported those teams, on the operational side, getting them connected with the technology, partners that I have on, the technology side as well.
Because I have seen, we've dealt with a lot of companies where they've had the finance and the HR business partners, but it's been very much transactional. This is your point of contact. If you have an issue, go to this person, they'll help you solve it. And then when they brought in the IT business partners, it's been the same thing, just more. Whereas in organizations that have had the IT business partners first, or maybe the BRM function first, it is much more of a strategic role, a lot less operational, a lot more kind of how can we help the business rather than, what does the business need from us?
Yeah. And I think where we are is still a lot more transactional, especially for my colleagues in other hospitals. Whereas we haven't gotten fully into the BRM, kind of engagement yet, where we're talking about value and we're talking about value propositions, things like that. So it's more transactional, but we are trying to, transition into that more BRM style role.
Have you been able to bring in, because I know in the BRM material and our own kind of approach to BRM, it's a lot more, we try to get involved in like managing things through an investment cycle and having an investment focus, looking at portfolios, because a lot of companies are traditionally project focused. Here's a project, it's been delivered and that's done. Whereas we find a lot of the time, BRMs, especially if there isn't a portfolio office, that's a role that the BRMs and business partners can fill. Is that something you've been involved in yourself?
No, well, so our organization has a project office and they handle all the projects, but they did stand up about 4 or 5 years ago, a demand, ideation and demand process, where we were in that role as a demand manager. And so we were working with our operational partners on their strategies, their business cases, use cases and things like that, and putting them into a demand ticket and then moving them along through wickets to get to the project office, where they were the ones that will manage schedules, they manage value, they manage things like that. So
And was there
has been involved in that, the back and forth. Go ahead. Sorry.
was there any involvement at the end of the project? So the project's been delivered, it's kind of on time, it's on budget. Does anyone look at, is this what the business wanted? Is it delivering the value that the business was expecting? Is there that kind of analysis at the end?
I think that's where that's definitely a BRM function, but that's not something that we've been included in my organization. We always we stay along throughout the process to engage various teams along the way. So we have business analysts who will be that vendor liaison and manage that vendor relationship when it comes to integrating and implementing the IT features of the application or the project. To that point, my team hasn't gone back at the end of a project to evaluate did we accomplish what we wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
It's more of especially I think in healthcare it's harder because there are things like there's a piece of hardware that an operation leader needed. And so I think the idea is that, did we get that piece of hardware installed and we're using it? Well, yeah, but I think, to really fully embrace that, that value proposition, did we set out, and achieve the things that we wanted to achieve? And I think that's still a place where we're evolving.
Okay.
And that's not handled by our team right now. It's handled more from the project office.
Okay. How many people are in your team?
So we have several communities. We have 3 communities, and in my community we have I think 7 in my particular team of IT business partner. Whereas it's and it corresponds each with a specific hospital. So every hospital in my community has an IT business partner, and so those 6 or 7 on my team, and then we also have a team of informatics analysts that are part of IT business partnership that are more the at the elbow support, help with things, the health record and workflows and managing those types of things. And so it's a pretty diverse team, and it's we're small but mighty.
Right. Where do you roll up into your function?
So my function is in business partnership. We have the vice president of business partnership rolls up into business transformation.
Okay.
And then obviously we report up through the CIO.
Oh, it's into the CIO. Okay. And have you had the same CIO the whole time that you've been there?
No. So when I first started, we had a seasoned CIO that had been there for many years and then retired out of the role. And then our current CIO has been there for about 5 or 6 years.
Okay, well, that's good, because one of the questions I was going to ask, we see a lot of times when new CIOs come in, if they don't understand the BRM or business partner function, that can be something that's the first to go. So it's comforting to hear that you've had a new CIO come in, understands the value, and is keen to keep you on. Do you know if he had or a business partnering function in their previous company?
Well, no, actually, interesting for our CIO is that he came from inside. So, and he had served in many roles within our organization, everything from being a technician, on a technician team, all the way up through various roles within the IT function, and now he serves as the CIO. So, I think he understands the IT function for our organization fairly well, and he definitely knows the value that our team brings to the organization as well. I think that's where we get a lot of support and a lot of trust, which is really great.
That's good. So go back to the company that you were working before, where you are now. Was it a similar situation? You're rolling up through the CIO, and did you have a change of CIO while you were there?
No, so yeah, let me clarify that. So the other company, my previous role here was in academia. I was teaching as a small community college, doing computer networking, security, administration type things. But in my current role, I've held 2 different locations that they're the same role, IT business partner, same title, but one was more at that corporate level, corporate strategy versus like a local hospital strategy. And so, we've had, consistent CIO in there, but yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to, I didn't clarify earlier. So
no problem. That's my mistake. So were there any, because we hear frequently from BRMs and business partners that there are certain attributes that a BRM would have that would help them in their role. And it's sometimes these are things that they've learned. Sometimes they're things that they've kind of had as an inbuilt capability. Can you say that there's anything that you've, throughout your career, there are things that have made you a good BRM or good business partner?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of those hard questions that always comes up because you try to infuse humility in what you do, and so it's hard to talk about the things that are big successes. But I think that all through my relationship, through academia. I was a middle school teacher, which is usually that 11 to 14-year-old age range for 16 years. And then I got into adult training, and then into community college, and now into this business partnership role.
Okay.
And I think the thing that really sticks out is just relationships, being able to meet people where they are, understand, listen and understand people, develop relationships when you don't need them, when they're not for a purpose other than just enjoying the company of a person. I know that when I first started in this role, I set out very deliberately to go through, at the time, it was pre-COVID, everybody was on campus. And so I would go cube to cube, office to office, just meeting people, getting to know what their roles were, understanding who they were. And then, in years and years passed by, and I've never needed to really leverage that relationship. But there was always an opportunity that comes up where, wait a minute, I know somebody who does that. So building relationships, cultivating those relationships, and just really, and at times leveraging those relationships to help you achieve results for your partners. I think it's really been the big success. Being playful, I think I'm a pretty playful guy. I tease a lot, and I'm approachable. I feel like, you can approach me, and I'm fairly open book, very candid. So if you're candid and you want to share with me, then I'm perfectly open to that, and usually relaxed in that kind of setting.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that helps. We've spoken to a number of people on episodes and outside of this, where they've said that, you really don't forget that you're a person when you come to work.
Yeah.
So you might have your game face on, but people want to deal with people, the real people, So it's always good to be open and honest, and a little playful. If that's how you are outside of work, why would you change when you're inside of work? So it's good not to put on some kind of persona when you're in the office.
Right. And I think the other thing too is, and this was a hard lesson for me, is to not take things personally. When I first started, things were happening. If things were broken or we weren't meeting a strategic goal, I would take that very personally. Or if somebody was upset about something that, somehow now they hate me and my family, that kind of thing. Whereas, as I've grown, I've gotten more emotional maturity, and I've seasoned, it's not a personal thing. It's not an attack on you. It's maybe a process that people are upset with, or maybe the timeline that people are upset with.
Right.
But like, you're exactly right, being human. I was just chuckling about, last week we have some pretty serious systems that are broken right now in the hospital, and it's causing a lot of stress and angst, and people are frustrated. And I was invited into a meeting where they were talking about various things that operationally that are happening in the hospital, and I was invited to address this system that's broken, and how we were progressing and getting a resolution with the manufacturer and with other partners. And prior to my time of that meeting, they do a section called myth busting. So it's a time for everybody in the room to tell a myth that you've been hearing, and then we will dispel that myth. Okay, so just kind of being playful, and it was tense. I walked to my part of the meeting, and I said, look, I go, there is a myth in this hospital that this particular system is working perfectly. And it took everybody a minute. They were stressed, and then they were like, oh, he's joking about it. Trying to take that really serious issue and just kind of diffuse it a little bit, and understand that we're working on it, but trying to use those human characteristics and that playfulness in a respectful way. You don't want to be completely silly when people don't trust you, but
Sure. Yeah. But I think that's really important. And I've mentioned on this podcast before, I've been in meetings with BRMs where one of them has left the meeting and then come back in tears. And it's really awful to see that, but it is when those people do take it to heart, and it's very difficult not to. I mean, if someone's really cross, and they'll make it known, you really do have to have a thick skin not to be affected by that. But I think it's something that over time, I guess your maturity as a person, as a BRM, can help with that. But I think sometimes, people are just sensitive to these things. It doesn't help.
Well, and I think, in a hospital setting, it is stressful. And I think maybe taken personally is not so much when something's heated, but when something's not working. And you can see that the direct results of it not working is impacting negatively somebody that depends upon that particular system or particular, thing. And so,
Yeah, yeah.
part of it is like I said, not taking things too seriously, but also, understanding the gravity of the moment. But yeah, you do definitely need to have some thick skin and develop thick skin, and I think that's a practiced and learned skill. Um, you know, that, like I said, I've tried to develop that over the years. And I think, part of it is because people that get in this role, a lot of them are servant leaders. They're here to serve. We're here to help. And so, like I said, I think it's a skill to try to not take things too personally.
Mm. Where do you find your relationships work the best? With which functions or which departments do you find that what you're doing is working well? And can you is anything you can put your finger on as to why it's working?
I think, right now what's interesting is developing a relationship with people that are at that field engineer, field technician level. That I feel like I'm having success there because I spend a lot of time with them, and understand them as people, get engaged in their life outside of work, those types of things, and just being a part of the group or being part of the conversation as opposed to being separated from it, or I think the other thing that and I think that's really hard though, Mark, is trying to find out if you're being successful or not. I think we go into this trusting that what we're doing is bringing value and is going to make a difference, but sometimes we're busy. I'm busy enough that there's not a lot of time to reflect on that, but also, aside from asking, hey, how am I doing? It's really kind of hard to judge if you're making that impact. I think part of it is if people continue to come to you, and they trust you in some of the most sensitive or most difficult situations, then I think that's where it is. Or when they come to you with a proposition, or an idea for a demand that they'd like to put in, something that they're going to engage in a project where they're bouncing ideas off of you. I think that's where you get the validation, because my experience has never been somebody comes to me and says, hey, you're really doing a great job and I value you a lot. In fact, I've actually had the opposite where I was standing in an office of a vice president one time and he said, I just kind of thinking back on our relationship, you bring me no value. And I'm like, what do you do with that? So
Thank you for your feedback.
it's like, right. So, and I welcomed it, and I felt like I handled it fairly well. I didn't take it personally, and then then we reevaluated, and over the next several meetings with that person, we set out goals of, okay, in order to get past the I bring you no value and build on that, what are the expectations? But I don't think, Mark, that anybody especially my organization, is going to tell me directly, hey, you're doing a great job. You bring me value.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, as is life, people generally tell you when you're not doing something well, but don't tell you when you are. And that's just how life is. But so Jeremy Byrne, who was in the first episode, and he was kind of the driving force behind the podcast. He said that if I walk past someone in the hall and they smile at me, then I know I'm doing a good job. If they don't smile at me and they accost me, then obviously I'm doing something wrong. So, yeah, silence is acceptance.
Well, I think, I think there's some interesting things though, that you bring that up. So when I stepped into the role, I don't know that the expectation was to be at in-person meetings. There was a lot of, because it was post-COVID, at this particular hospital, at post-COVID, a lot of meetings were handled over Teams, WebEx at the time, and then Teams. And so when I came in the role, immediately I started attending meetings in person, even if it seemed like it was, not as I don't know how to say it, but without being disrespectful, but meetings of that kind of innocuous meetings. I would show up to meetings in person, and it seemed to me like it was a big deal. I mean, the people would, like you said, smile, shake hands, introduce themselves. I think being present is really important, and I think that's where you do get that validation. Like you said, the smile in the hallway, the nod, or hey, what's up? The other day, the leader of this particular hospital reached out a hand and gave me a fist bump. Didn't say anything else, just a fist bump. And, that's like, all right, I think I'm doing okay.
Yeah. No, it's really good to get that validation and the acceptance. It's a nice gesture. And it's something I wish people would do more often. It's just those small things that doesn't kind of seem much, but it's just, I'm sure it made you feel great inside and it was kind of motivational for the rest of the day.
Absolutely. But the other thing that's kind of going on, the validation piece there is, it's a blessing and a curse, because once you get that validation, people trust you and they depend upon you, then they send their friends your way. And so then you add more business to your plate. You have more stuff to do but I think that's validation. If people trust you enough to send their friends, people they trust your way, because they feel like you have something to offer, that's great validation.
Do you spend any time, so you mentioned with that one person where they said you didn't bring value, so you took the time to sit down with them and go through it. Is that like a formal process that you can go through? So if you have new partners that you're working with, that you can sit down, go through a formal process to say, look, this is what I can offer you. This is what I understand you need. Where do we meet in the middle?
No, I don't traditionally do a set formal process. It's something that I probably should, because when I came into this particular role, I was the new guy. Everybody was established. And so, rather than, I was taking over for somebody who held the role. So that there was a certain understanding. So it just felt awkward for me at the time. Would feel awkward to, formalize it, say, all right, this is, and here's how I can help and the value I can bring. It's more informal conversations in doorways of the office, in the hallways when you run into people. But I think now that I'm established myself, here, sitting down, setting up some one-on-one time and going through some more formality and setting up the value proposition of what can we do? What can we get out of this partnership, and what can I provide in that piece? I think it's something I'd like to do, but I haven't done it up to this point, to be honest.
I think it's a nice Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to mention with the one gentleman that it was more formal, and it was written goals. Definitely more follow up. Whereas the cadence between meetings or between meetups were shorter and more timely. Just so that made sure that we were on level footing, and we can start our relationship, forward, progressing forward.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I think it can be one of those things. It's like it becomes a formality, and then it's, not really value adding. But then I do think every now and then it's nice to just stop and say, okay, well, I used to know what you did. I'm sure that's what you're still doing, but why don't we just have a chat about it? Because maybe your goals have changed. Maybe the people that you're working, maybe your deliverables have changed. So it might be nice just to have a catch up to make sure that we're still on the same page.
Yeah, and I think some of that comes in, like I said, those doorway chats, the hallway chats, where they'll say, "Oh boy, it'd be really nice if somebody, if we could get some help doing this," and that's where I can say, well, that's how you can leverage my role with it. Really, that's the joy of this relationship, is you can leverage my role to achieve this function that you're looking for. And so there's a lot of that level setting, while not formal or in a formal setting, but it is reestablishing kind of how we can partner to infuse IT in what you're trying to do, and then also who can we talk to bounce ideas off of. So that resetting, I guess, is happening.
Yeah. Do you ever share what your function is doing? Any of the successes that you've been part of? Any the pipeline that you've got? Is there any way that you can kind of demonstrate to other people who might not be aware of what you're doing, what you've been involved in?
That's I think it also comes with humility as well. I mean, I think that's the problem that I face sometimes is I don't generally talk about my successes. It's really hard to. It mostly feels like going on to the next thing, where you chalk up the success and privately you pat yourself on the back. But I can see where growing into that would be important, where if I could share successes, then it would also help people understand where they could find use in that partnership.
Yeah, and that's really
But it's not something that I've done yet.
that was my reason, I guess, for that question, because we see so often that BRM teams are disbanded or business partners are kind of let go when new CIOs come in, and it's still, even though the role has been around for a while, it's still very unfamiliar to a lot of people. Project managers, people know what they do. Architects, people know what they do. Business partners and business relationship managers, it's still kind of a new role. So I think, from while we're not trying to blow our own trumpets, but it is nice, I think, to share with the people what it is you're involved in, so they can see how you've helped. But it also helps, I guess, generate ideas as well, because if you've been working with someone and you've achieved something that's led to this amount of value being delivered, it might catch the attention of someone else who wasn't aware of that particular thing. So I think it's really, I totally get where you don't want to you don't want to tell everyone how great you are, but at the same time, I think the work that you are doing is adding value, and sharing that with other people. I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and I think I'm just trying to figure out what would be the avenue to do that. I know we try to do it, within our own team, sharing successes and things like that. But there's just so much. It's hard to kind of isolate which ones should we be talking about, or amongst our own team, but then amongst the leadership of the operational leadership. Just trying to find an avenue where we can share that. I know that my leader is my direct leader is doing community connections, where they go into the hospitals and meet with the upper leadership of the hospital, and they talk about like our role as a team. But for me, as a single contributor in that, it's I don't have as much, because the time that I am engaged is mostly we're working on something. It's not time to, where we have a chance to really talk about the successes and tout those things.
But even as a function, I think one of the things that I see BRMs do often is, as I mentioned earlier, is that they take on like a portfolio approach or a role. So if there's a group of projects going on, they will oversee that. They can then publish, this is the things that have been worked on currently. This is the direction they're heading in. But this is what our involvement is, or this is how we've helped, progress these things. And then when you get to the end, you can then share the success of that this project has been delivered, this program has been delivered, this, the business was really happy because this is the impact it's had on them. So sharing those kind of things, even if it's not one person that's specifically spotlighted, if you can spotlight the whole BRM function, I think that really would be great.
Yeah, I think I maybe misunderstood the question or the topic, because our team does do that. So we have to report to our leadership within the BRM role, or the business partnership role. We have to report through to our leadership the things that we're doing, that the big projects that we're working on. We also include challenges. What challenges are you facing? What's the progress of that particular endeavor? And then if it's something you've completed, was it successful, or are there any things that needed to be cleaned up or followed up upon? And that goes through to our to my leadership, and then they share with the community leadership that direction. But for me personally, it's mostly within my own leadership structure, as opposed to my partners.
Okay. So going back to the beginning now, what does a typical day look like for you?
Well,
is there such a thing as a typical day?
Right. No, and because we are still transitioning from being that order taker, catch all of hey, this is a weird situation, or this is this particular piece of equipment needs to be addressed, or whatever. We're still in that role a little bit, and so it's kind of a hodgepodge of all kinds of different things. So generally, my day is kind of catching up on all the things that happened overnight. The things that happened for when I left to overnight. I like to, I've talked to people about this too. It's kind of like, you know, wearing your camp counselor T-shirt while you're in a pool treading water. Somebody hands you a baby. There's a tornado coming. There's a fire hat that you put on. That kind of thing. So it's a little bit of everything. And no day is scripted or planned. I take it. What it really does make it hard sometimes because of this transition to be strategic and to be forward thinking, because there's a lot of in the now that we do. In fact, this morning, somebody just, pinged me that, hey, did you order this piece of equipment that we were looking for? And that kind of stuff.
All right.
But it is a lot of, talking people off ledges. So being that camp counselor, it is a lot of hustle to get things ordered or get things processed. And then there's the chaotic moments of a system breaking, and you have to engage leadership in the IT function to do that. But it's always different. I think that's what I really enjoy about it, because I think I have slightly a little bit of undiagnosed ADHD where, my brain's always going. But I like it because it's always different. It's always a challenge. There are small ways and big ways where you can make a difference, and that's what I really like.
Is there anything that you've done since moving into this role that has made a big impact on what you do, made things easier for you, or improved, the service that you offer?
Yeah. So I've made a pledge to myself to always engage. So no matter how difficult a situation is, or no matter what the plan is to always be available, and not knowing what the results are going to look like, and not knowing at what risk I'm putting myself into by agreeing to be engaged. But I think that's where I'm setting myself up to be successful, is to be that guy that people can come to. They know they can always count on me to be there, even if it's difficult. I think there's a tendency in a lot of areas to say, well, that's really not my role. I don't want to engage in that. Whereas even if it's not my role, I'll engage, but then I'll help you find the person whose role it is. I'm not going to, give you a cold shoulder, cold handoff. It's going to be a warm handoff with people who I would consider friends. I'm going to pass you off to one of my friends because I've spent all these years getting to know these people. So that's really, I think, where I'm setting myself up. It's just being engaged and being informed, always listening, that kind of thing.
That's great. And it's I've spoken to a couple of guys on here that have said, one of the things that they like doing as a business partner is building other people's relationships. And it's just for the thing that you said, you can't always help people. Sometimes it's just not your responsibility. Sometimes you don't have the knowledge. But being able to connect other people, and that those people can then build relationships that will then last, it just makes the whole thing more efficient. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, and I know this is going to sound kind of cheeky or dumb, but I was really impacted by the TV show Ted Lasso. And there's a lot of there are aspects of Ted Lasso's character that I see myself doing. That sometimes I'm deeply troubled inside, but yet I'm still positive, and I still try to connect people. There's some things that he does in the show where he says, hey, you've met this person, now both of you've met somebody really great, and that's that kind of same spirit. So that's kind of what I try to do. I do, if I go to a party or a function and I see the person sitting over by themselves, I'm going to be over there introducing myself and engaging them with other people that are around. That's kind of my role. Hey, I can't solve your problem, or I can't address that, but I know who can, and here they are, and do that introduction. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm sure people really appreciate that. Is there anything that you've got planned in the short term that's, things that you want to change in your role or in the function that you think are going to make, a good impact?
Yeah, I'd like to go and now that I've been in this particular hospital for about 8 months or so, and so I'd like to really get around it and set up a cadence with some of the operational leaders of fairly regularly to talk about, even if there's nothing going on, talk about, the value proposition, talk about, the relationship, how is this relationship, how is it going to develop and where are we going with it? And how can we leverage it to get you what you need when it comes to, integrating IT into hospital operations. So I think that's one key, is just to sit down and formalize a little bit, like you had mentioned earlier, but to sit down and have a regular cadence with some of the operational leaders. Like to do that. And then I liked your suggestion of just really kind of spending some time touting some of the things that we do where we have brought value and have had successes. That's new as of about 20 minutes ago, said something. So I really would like to do that. And then, I think those are two that's where I'd start probably.
Okay. Do you spend much time engaging with senior management? So, not your people, but on higher levels.
Not anymore, but I do have, when I was at the corporate level, I was at I was communicating with folks at the senior vice president level and communicating with vice presidents across the organization. Whereas in the hospital, I am engaged with the hospital leadership, at the president, COO, CNO level. But I spend a lot of time with managers and directors, not so much at the VP level and above. But I do engage with them, but not regularly.
I was just curious because I've having spoken to many other business partners, some feel like they're not achieving, they're not doing a good job as a business partner if they're not dealing with the very senior people, because I guess the ultimate goal of a BRM or a business partner is to be strategic and to be, mixing with these people. But I think as long as you're making an impact, as long as you're, helping these things along, as long as you're helping your business partners progress their programs, you are making a difference. So I think that's the important thing, not so much who you're dealing with, but that you are building decent relationships, nurturing relationships, and they are making an impact and helping deliver that value.
But just I think the same is true, like where I was talking about connecting people, kind of in my function, is that the hospital leadership in my case have those connections as well. So I'm, when I was working through a fairly significant system, outage and, just a lot of stress around a system not working appropriately, engaging daily with some operational leaders that are not up at that senior level, more at the manager's, director level. And when I did have an opportunity to reach out to the CNO and talk to them about the situation, basically, they were like, yeah, I know, I'm updated because so-and-so updates me. They have people too, I have people, they have people. So yeah. I don't know that personally that I feel like I'm not achieving something if I don't reach out to the senior leadership, because I know that those directors and those managers are reaching that senior level. And and I think that helps for like a team approach. It doesn't have to be BRM 1 to see it, COO 1. It could be their team and our team engaging in that way. So to head toward, that's where some value can be had.
Yeah. Do you ever have the opportunity to speak to business partners or BRMs outside of your organization?
Not very often. I try and get on LinkedIn and engage with business partnership groups, but I'm still learning the role, and a lot of listening and a lot of kind of peeking at what everybody else is writing and internalizing that. But I don't really have a lot of people in my network that are in that business partnership BRM role. And so it does make it hard, with some of the limitations on my time to engage others. I think that's where I would I really do struggle.
Because I think that's something, I deal a lot with BRMs in the UK, and they've got fantastic community within higher education. So the universities there's a lot of BRMs and business partners there. and they regularly communicate. They, they arrange their own little get-togethers, but they also online will have meetings and discuss, things that are happening. And I know that I've spoken to people in other industries as well, in the legal industry, and in medical as well. I think it would be wonderful to be able to share more with people that are outside of your company, because I think, there's so much that people can learn from other people. There's so many of these challenges that other people have already faced and overcome, but also it's just nice to share, if you do have a challenge that you're struggling with, to hear that other people are either feeling the same, so you can kind of get comfort in that, or that they've managed to overcome that somehow and can share that with you. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest with you, I was telling my wife the other day that, that sometimes this is a very lonely position. And I think that that's where, it is isolating, because, there are relationships out there, and I cultivate relationships and build relationships. But it can be very lonely, as well. And I think that's where what like you're mentioning is, if you had a network of folks to reach out to and to share ideas with, I think that would help. Yeah.
Yep. I was just curious. Actually, I've completely lost my train of thought there. I'll have to pause the recording on this. But it's going back to the communities, because it is a way I've spoken, particularly in higher education, that there's a lot of people get guidance from what's out there already. So like the BRM Institute has a body of knowledge, so people can gain from that. But there are specific industries tend to have their own quirks. I know I've dealt with people in fast moving consumer goods. They just seem to operate in a certain way. So if you can get input from them, because sometimes best practice for one industry is not best practice for the others, and sometimes you just have to work within the confines of your organization. So you might have an idea about what you want to do, but ultimately you might never get there, because just the people have a certain way of doing things, and they're either not willing to change, or it won't work. So you have to get used to shoot. You can shoot for the stars, but you might never get there, because just in your current role, it's just not the option. But yeah, I definitely think being able to share with the community is something that's really helpful.
Right. No, I agree with that. And outside of the organization would be important as well. I think that's where I could get some value. Because I think sometimes even within the organization, you have to explain to people who do your role what you do. It's even within the IT business partner world that I'm in. There's 6 or 7 of us on the team, and we all have different goals, different expectations of the role, and our different interactions with in the environments that we're at, even though that they're teammates. So I think that's where getting some ideas and collaborating outside, it would be good. But also, kind of as I'm thinking about it, is really having kind of we do have some collaboration lunch once a quarter or so, but it's not really to engage in what are we doing. Mostly it's kind of situational awareness. It's situational problem solving, but it's not anything where we're discussing kind of the role and how do we expand the role or define the role. It's more of that day-to-day operational engagement. But I think that there would be some value, maybe, and that's maybe going back to that question where you said, where's the plans? Maybe that's something where I could even engage inside my organization with other people in my role tomorrow. I know this seems awkward, but let's talk about it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think these conversations can be very awkward. And if you're not accustomed to awkward, then it could be crippling. But I think, even just starting with sharing with them in my organization would be a good goal for me.
Yeah. I always like to ask people, our guests, if they could offer one piece of advice to people that are either moving into this role or that are in it and maybe struggling a bit. What would it be? What has kind of helped you the most in your role?
I'd say to never underestimate the value of the relationships that you're building, even if they're not strategic. They're just coming across somebody at the lunch counter. Never underestimate that relationship that you're building there, because you just never know.
I think that's really great. And actually, I always remember I had a manager once many moons ago, and he said, always make sure that you make friends with the MD's secretary. And he was kind of teaching me power dynamics. You know, people that you meet, you might not necessarily see their influence, but trust that it's there. And that's maybe a kind of crude definition, but it is. You don't know, kind of what influence people have. You don't know what ways you can help people. So the more people you can meet and get to know, the better it is, obviously. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's and I learned a lot. Well, sorry. Please continue.
Yeah, but I was just going to add something. I think kind of along that lines, just a personal anecdote. My father died a couple years ago, and I took it really hard. And what was really surprising to me about what I just mentioned about never underestimating those relationships is some of the people that I never would have expected to help me through the pain and grief of my father passing were those people that I never would have expected, or that there was no expectation on their relationship. And I think that's where I was healed the most with some of those relationships. Just getting to know people, and it was strategic, and there was just a lot of value in that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about your father's passing, but it's nice to hear that those people were able to come out and support you.
Sure.
Well, look, Scott, we've kind of come to the end of our time now, so I'll draw this to a close. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. I know we've been chatting for a couple of weeks now to try and get this together, so I'm really happy that you're able to spare the time to sit with me. As always, these things always uncover some nice insights that we can share with other people to help them along. So I'm sure people enjoy listening to this. I've certainly been enjoying being a part of it. So thank you, Scott, for your time.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah, I look forward to posting this episode out.